Hello, everybody. It's my proud privilege to talk on the topic: Has India managed to convert the pandemic threat into an opportunity? In this presentation, I shall cover first the decisions taken by Indian government in dealing with the threat and pandemic and its effect on the resilient India. The second part, dealing primarily with the operational insight into the Indian industry, will be covered by my colleague, Mr. Harsha Sastry. My presentation will be dealt as: first, we shall talk about pandemic-related events and actions taken by India since January 2020. The events and actions will give us an idea of the perceived threat risk. Then we shall analyze how these threats stroke risk have been changing over a period of time. We shall cover it since Jan 2020 onwards till this moment. Keeping the threat risk into mind, what are the steps taken by resilient India to convert this threat into an opportunity? In brief, we shall see what India has done. Then we shall step on to what are the expected gains from the actions taken, looking into the future. Here we go. Initially, COVID-19 was spreading in China. That is how we saw it. The risk was perceived as very low. We always felt, oh, nothing will happen to us. Swine flu, nothing happened. SARS, nothing happened. We are in the warm region, so nothing will happen to us. Notwithstanding, we took a few steps. Surveillance and screening of international passengers was started. Some visa and travel restrictions was imposed, but nothing very serious. Though I must admit that the actions taken by India were far, far in advance than many other countries. By March, we saw the exponential growth of COVID worldwide, especially Europe. And we saw people needing ventilators, people dying on the streets. All these social media posts were quite disturbing. At that stage, we only had one testing facility in India, COVID testing facility, that too in Pune. Doctor to patient ratio was 1:1,445. Hospital beds ratio was very poor, 0.7 to 1,000. At that stage, ventilators were considered extremely important, and the entire India had just 40,000 ventilators for a population of 1.3 billion. In March, the so-called experts were giving different kinds of advice. Some were saying with the population of 1.3 billion, millions are going to die. On the other hand, some were saying, well, it's just a flu. Like Sweden, what did Sweden do? They initially, UK and Sweden believed in herd immunity. And they said, let it go, nothing will happen. For India, with 1.3 billion population, we considered the risk as very high. It was not only for human risk, but the governance risk. Imagine the scenes that we had seen, how people were dealt with in China, if a similar situation had occurred in India, with lack of medical facilities, great population density, and a democratic society, quite unlike China or such other countries. It was a recipe for anarchy. A human catastrophe would have led to governance anarchy. India took strict action. did not delay. 11th March, all visas suspended. By 19th March, all incoming flights to India were suspended. India went for a full, complete lockdown. From 25th March, we did 1 or 2 days lockdown practice a few days before, but the complete lockdown was 25th of March onwards. This put a brake on the economy. By 31st May, the COVID cases rose to 182,000 from a mere 3 in January 31st till end February, beginning March. There were just about 7 cases. Till end May, it rose to 182,000. Daily surge was around 8,000. Threat perceived. Now here the situation changes. Human threat was perceived as extremely high, and due to lockdown, the threat changed its course to economic threat. People who are poor wouldn't get food, their daily wages, they were hurt. India started developing itself, preparing itself. Testing facilities ramped up from 1 to 688 by end of May. We started making PPE kits, ventilators, big way. We had to still save ourselves from a human disaster. Lockdown phases 2, 3, and 4 were announced one after another, right up to 31st May. The Prime Minister had to look at the economic aspect also, and he's announced $280 billion package. Now, this package was not in one go, it was in phases. During that period, something very interesting, the stock market had all come down. And there were Chinese firms taking over or buying stocks in distressed companies. India came out, changed the FDI policy immediately to curb opportunistic takeovers and acquisitions. On 12th May, PM announced a very important initiative, Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now, Atmanirbhar is a Hindi word which means self-reliance. We had to be self-reliant. In June, July, situation was slightly better, but yes, the COVID cases was going up. It crossed 1.6 million. Daily surge around 55,000. During June, a new threat emerged for India. Chinese and Indian troops engaged themselves in a bloody battle in which 20 Indian soldiers were killed. According to Americans, more than 35 Chinese were killed, but as always, the Chinese PLA never disclosed their numbers. By then, due to the lockdown, economy had contracted by 23.8% of GDP. According to figures, this was the highest any country had gone down. Period April to June. Risk situation threat had changed. Just see. From human risk, it is now external risk had become. Geopolitical threat was posing, and economic slowdown was staring at India. Actions taken, we had to unlock. We had done 5 phases of locking. Now the brakes had to be removed. Unlock phase 1 and 2, unlock. We unlocked in phases. Those types of businesses which could work in the COVID situation were allowed to. The Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative about self-sufficiency, PPE production grew from 0 in February to 450,000. Something very interesting India did. India set up a $2.9 billion fund for IIT, Indian Institute of Technology. Now, Indian Institute of Technology are the premier technology institutes in India. They were given this fund to support innovation. Go and create whatever you can create, India. And they were told to support Make in India initiative. Indian companies came back and said, 5G network, we will do it in India. We will not take Huawei. Big push was given for the defense and aerospace industry. By August, September, COVID cases rose to 6.3 million. Daily surge, 80,000 plus. We increased the testing, and that is one of the reasons why the daily surge had also gone up. The external threat from China increased. Chinese army positioned heavy armor troops. Now, this forced India also to move their heavy armor. Geopolitical risk in South China Sea escalated. Risk and threat as perceived, obviously, extremely very high, but the type of risk was external, geopolitical, and economic. Steps taken by India, we kept on unlocking. We slowly and steadily started the unlocking process. Towards October, end November, cases have gone up to 8.9 million. However, the daily surge at the moment is lesser. External threat remains the same because there's a total trust deficit between the Chinese troops and the Indians on the border. This forced us to take geopolitical risk to its logical conclusion by forming the Quad. First time, Australia was permitted to join the Malabar exercise. The Malabar exercise is the naval exercise undertaken by America, India, Japan in the past, and this time, for the first time, Australia was invited. India and US signed a BECA agreement on sharing geospatial intelligence. This gives phenomenal amount of accuracy in targets acquisition and destruction to India. Simultaneously, India signed military logistic agreements with US, Japan, and more countries are likely to join. Risk, external, geopolitical, economic continues, same as extremely high. We did unlock, continued to unlock phase 5, and an additional stimulus announced worth $35.33 billion. Having presented various actions, threat situations since January 2020, let us summarize the changing threat risk scenario. In this slide, I'm presenting 5 different types of threats to risk. These are human, governance, economic, external, and geopolitical. One by one, the first one, human. In January, February, human risk was perceived very low. We felt COVID, nothing would happen. And in March, it zoomed up. Because this is when we realized the real potential, adverse potential COVID can cause. However, when we started managing it, it came down. Similarly, the governance risk was perceived very high in March. As we managed COVID well, people were in control, the government management was better, this risk came down. If you would have noticed, in March, India did a lockdown. So the third, economic risk, emerged as high in April/May. It remained high. Once the unlock started, this risk started coming down. The value of this risk reduced. The next risk is the external risk. During June, July, due to conflict situation with China and the situation in the Ladakh region posed external risk as high. This risk continues to remain high. Geopolitical risk, South China Sea and the Indo-Pacific region. Here, along with the external risk, in June, July, it emerged and continues to remain high as the external risk. From this slide, one would then appreciate that various threat scenarios have changed for India. Risk has changed. One action has led to increased risk of a different type. Has India been resilient? For this, we must first appreciate what is resilience. The adaptive capacity of an organization in a complex and changing environment. So the big question is, has India managed to adapt to changing environment? Before we see what India has done, let us go back into history and see what did President Roosevelt do during the Great Depression. In management of Great Depression, President Roosevelt adopted on the 3 R's: relief for the vulnerable, recovery of the economy, and reform of the financial system. Well, what did India do? Before we come to that, we'll have to first see whether the Great Depression and the pandemic are comparable. In my personal opinion, pandemic is far more complex in nature than the Great Depression. Great Depression was only dealing with the financial system. Here, the threat, so risk scenario has been changing, increasing by the day. Notwithstanding, India has adopted steps very similar in some stages what the US had done. Approach by India. Immediate step. First, India adopted the barbell hedging strategy. This strategy talks about consider the worst case scenario and act. And the worst case scenario was millions and millions will be impacted by COVID. Initial focus was on human life safety. We started all relief measures for the poor and those below poverty line, like providing rations, providing money directly to the bank accounts, cooking gas free. The government of India was looking at immediate relief to the needy and the poor. Take preventive steps to contain lockdowns. In the meantime, what we did was prepare ourselves to get ready. We built up a medical infrastructure. The people, medical staff, prepare them. As immediate step, all the statutory and compliance matters, they were provided relief. Nobody was compelled to file their compliance-related returns or reports. All were delayed. Long-term measures, economic package to revive the economy. We adopted the Atmanirbhar Bharat, that is self-sufficiency. In addition, we also undertook certain structural changes through key policy initiatives. And to deal with the external geopolitical threat, we embarked upon increased defense capability and diplomatic initiatives. One by one. First, the economic package. The key aspect of these economic packages was there were no freebies to anybody, except the poor and the people living below poverty line. No organization, no company were given any freebies. They were provided support by way of moratorium of payments, loans, returns. 100% government guarantee was provided on loan from banks for MSME section. MSME is medium and small enterprise. Set up funds at IIT Council to support creativity. And as they announced these packages, they said more packages will come as we need them. The Atmanirbhar Bharat. Some of us may feel that this is talking about centralization and isolation. No, it is not. According to principal economic advisor, Atmanirbhar Bharat policy is not a return to import substitution or license raj, or about protecting inefficient industries. It's about improving the resilience of a highly competitive industry. In this, India as a country took a decision that in all global tenders up to 2.27 million USD, you cannot call any foreign entity. Indian company will have to be provided. This gave a big push to the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. Structural changes, key policy initiatives. Let's go one by one. Commercial mining, coal sector, very important. To reduce import substitution, increase self-reliance, we allowed commercial mining. To boost growth in the mineral sector, invite state-of-art technology and private investment. Defense production, well, FDI limit increase. For FDI stands for foreign direct investment. Limit raised from 49 to 74%, so that companies can claim full ownership. Import of 101 key items banned. They only can be produced in India. And it was agreed that over a period of time, more such items will be included in the banned list, so that Indian manufacturers are provided the incentive. Civil aviation, a change in the airspace management so that civil aviation becomes more competitive. Space sector, like America, we see Elon Musk SpaceX program taking place. In India also, private sector will be allowed to use ISRO facility. ISRO is the Indian Space Research Organization. Private companies and satellites, launches and space-based services will be included. It's a big boost to the Indian manufacturing and private industry. Ease of doing business for companies was steps were taken so that people can straight away get on with doing jobs, businesses. The COVID situation and the anti-China stance taken by many countries, a number of businesses were likely to move out of China, and India provided a very good place. Accordingly, the ease of doing business for corporates was further improved. A major reform in the agricultural sector was taken by farm bills. This will have a very long-term benefit in the GDP for India. Now a farmer in India can sell his produce in any part of India and world. Earlier, a farmer had to be within its limit, geographical limit. This has been removed. Water management, water risk, this may appear as something not linked to pandemic, but water management is likely to pose a very serious risk for countries in the years to come. India has embarked upon efficient and better water management. Railways took the time off in upgrading the infrastructure since a lot of trains were cancelled. A long-term view, new education policy. After 35-40 years, India has embarked upon new education policy, make our education system more competitive. During the COVID situation, a lot of migrant laborers moved from one city to another. And there was this problem they faced, that they could not draw their rations since they were away from home. India then embarked upon one ration card, one nation. That means any Indian can be in any part of India, can draw rations. Labor land acquisition. So labor and land acquisition is a state subject. So many states in India, especially one such I can name is Uttar Pradesh, where labor and land acquisition laws were modified to give big boost to industries and manufacturing sector. Let us now look at the management of external threat, because this threat is real at present. And how did India manage this? India has been increasing its defense capability since some time. In the field of anti-satellite, missiles, air power, blue water navy, this is what we want to be. As they say, if you are powerful, you can avert a war. This is extremely important, because if India engages in a conflict with its neighbor, the growth situation for India will be severely hampered. We have increased defense production locally. We want things to be done in India, manufacturing big way. Quad has been formed. Now this Quad between US, India, Japan, Australia will prove as a deterrent for Chinese Communist Party. Hopefully, they should not. Australia joined the Malabar exercise, naval exercise, as I speak today. The second phase of Malabar exercise is going on. India and US have signed the BECA agreement of sharing geospatial intelligence, military logistic agreements with various countries to provide logistic support to the Navy and Air Force. All these actions taken, what does it mean for India in future? We are already at negative growth during Q1 and Q2. Technically, it means recession. India, for the first time, has reached or embarked upon recession. Nevertheless, let's see where we are now. Our tax collection in October is 10% higher than October of 2019. That means our economy is bouncing back. In September, exports are at 98.4% of the normal and imports at 73%. Imports are lower. This may show that we are not growing. But then we have embarked upon Atmanirbhar, self-sufficiency. We want to reduce our dependence. So imports are likely to be a little lesser. But exports at 98.4% shows near normal. Automobile sector growth. Maruti Suzuki, one of the biggest automakers in India, registered 34% growth in September. Nikkei, Manufacturing and Purchasing Index, 56.8. Any figure over 50 shows growth. And we have shown in September at 56.8, which is the highest reading since January 2012. Our stock markets are at the highest at the moment. IMF predicts GDP growth of around 8.8% for the next financial year, not this one. This one, current financial year, we are going to be at negative growth, estimated at minus 10.1% by Goldman Sachs and by IMF at 10.6. From minus 10 point some figure to 8.8 will be a big jump. In my personal assessment, this growth for the next financial year is going to will be much more than 8.8%. It is likely, I won't be surprised if it is a double-digit growth. Changes in farm laws, Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative, focus on research and development with public-private partnership is going to show results in the next 3 to 5 years. Our new education policy will have impact on the overall quality of human resource in the next 5 to 7 years. This is what they say. Innovation is the ability to see the change as an opportunity, not as a threat. This is what probably India has done. We probably made Steve Jobs proud of what he says.
Thank you, Rakesh. I am Harsha Sastry now to take over and to speak about the India managed to convert the pandemic threat into an opportunity. Yes, the industry operational insight would be provided by me for all of us to understand the India side of it, which is the largest outsourcing destination for many IT as well as non-IT work products. The begin is important. What we shall view today is the begin and the re-begin as we transition COVID-19. We have all traveled this journey and gained experience. Each one of us have described the milestones in different ways. This is the diversity with uniformity in the objective of protecting ourselves, protecting to recover, protecting to resume, to resolve the threat of the pandemic COVID-19. I shall cover aspects here from the industry operational insight of converting the pandemic threat to an opportunity in India for building resilience. The 5 pillars, stops, or milestones for building resilience in the journey are aligned with the first aspect of action to protect in navigating times of uncertainty, the agility to continue, which includes the attributes of this strategy, the aspiration to transform, the analytics to boost towards quick response, which is the organizational resilience, and adopt, adapt, adapt of the principles of coexistence. Navigating the uncertainty. Every event is responded and navigated with a set of recovery strategies. The challenge is when the event scenarios are agile and the response to is essentially required to be flexible, governed, and agile too. The response to COVID-19 has put organizations in 3 different roles. The first one was about responding as an organization and an enterprise. The second one was responding as a supplier. And the third one was responding as a customer. Responding as an enterprise or an organization, it was about considering the associates, the corporate social responsibility, and ensuring that people were well, environments were maintained, security was maintained, customer communication was in, engaging with teams was enabled, work from home strategies which were adapted across the globe, across the country, were activated, and the limited aspects of work from office for essential services was secured, protected, and enabled. Responding as a supplier, it was all about connecting to customers, ensuring that the commitments are met, and coordinating for enabling the remote operations that was triggered due to the pandemic. All industries did well here. Responding as a customer, it was all about being people-centric, client-centric, commitment-centric, as well as supportive and being collaborative. This was navigating the uncertainty during the pandemic COVID-19 in India across industries. So, what are the attributes of the strategy? Attention, boosting, converging were the three elements that were very important. The first one was to pay attention to the important elements. The second one was to boost capability. And the third one was to converge strategies across processes and platforms. So this was the ABC of the attributes. So being agile, able to move in fast, the security centric aspects for the people, the data, the accesses, networks, relationships was very important. Being adaptive was equally very critical because it was important to quickly align to the ecosystem and guidelines of the nation, the state, and the city of operation. Social distancing also was important as much as physical distancing and virtual teams was critical. Virtual control centers for key processes and monitoring was a key attribute that was seen as the strategy across industry. The first step is always about people. Everything begins with the people. The first is people, whether the event is a security event, a natural disaster, a cyber event, an IT event, or a fire. The individual is the first to be secure. Pandemic is no different. People are the first who are to be secure, and this has been the principle that the industry has always taken care of. People perspectives and passion are the first three P's which were addressed by the human resources, the organization, and the people care agencies across the organization. The building of trust ensured protectiveness of the self-interest and livelihood of people. The HR policies alignments, life coaches, connect sessions, virtual town halls, and family welfare took center stage, bringing in people care, resilience, and the entire mile of togetherness. Together through virtual, we remain connected and bound was the theme of the first step that we took around people. The workspace and the new design. The new design of the workspace was also important. This journey was a transformation opportunity from one mindset to the other mindset. It included the transformation of how we work together, the coaching as well as learning across the leaders, the managers, and the associates was a synchronous action in all industries across the country. The rethink and redesign was an innovation to simplify and magnify but protect too. Transportation to mobilize physically, mentally, and virtually was an important aspect that was also integrated in the workspace and the new design. Partnerships of supply chain more inclusive and more closer through distance physically as an objective to continue services was the aspect. Security as the heart of the story, safeguards, controls, monitoring was yet another transformation to the self-resilient organization. The future-ready workplace the industry is headed towards, the work and the place is a combination of the ABCDEF of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. The A is about awareness aligned to people centricity. The B is about building a security wall aligned to remote working, data access, secure connections, applications, and intellectual property rights. The C is about continuous automation, and the D is about distributed systems and cloud computing. The E is about execution, speed, quick response, quick resolve. And the F is about federation, awards, recognition, and innovation in the workplace. Organization resilience is something to do with the next leap industry is moving towards. And availability policy, not restricted to the IT ops, or applications, but to every business function, was an important aspect and an important aspect. Resilience, adoption of a strategy, resilience through partnerships is the rhythm that the industry has caught up with. Business and beyond is the horizon, hence, keeping the clock ticking for eternity is the actual goal that the organizations across the country are targeting towards. Trained and aware people, coach rather than compel, secure product engineering, operations, all designed for secure, resilient operations is the key objective. Exercise, exercise, exercise is the rhythm. More reliable, more deeper, and more wider. Fast and quick recovery, decisions on data analytics and results is the epicenter for response and recovery. It's, a, it's all about coexistence. The journey is all about people, technology, virtual environments, all together. It's all about security as the epicenter. It's all about resilience as the journey ahead. Coexistence is about a resilient organization available always. It's about data, information assets, collaborative tools, cloud, artificial intelligence, virtualized environments, and people managing this entire show for a resilient coexistence. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for sparing your valuable time. Look forward to your feedback.